Dam failures are some of the greatest engineering catastrophes ever seen on our planet. The floodwater that is released is enough to inundate hundreds of thousands of acres of land and destroy entire towns and villages. Unfortunately, all around the world exists a number of dams that are considered at risk and for one reason or another may be on the verge of collapse. If something isn't done soon, the devastation from the failure of these mega structures could be unlike anything we have ever seen before. From torrential rain threatening the integrity of the Three Gorges Dam, the largest in the entire world, to a massive dam in Iraq that was built right on top of a mineral that dissolves when in contact with water, here are 10 dams that could fail at any second. Back in 2020, China experienced torrential rain of epic proportions. Many parts of the country are already known to experience extreme rainfall each year, but this one was definitely out of the ordinary. The rainfall spanned across 24 provinces, flooding homes and villages. This, however, is not what made the news around the world. The rainfall called into question the strength of the Three Gorges Dam, the largest hydroelectric project in the entire world. Some experts even warned that it could have collapsed at any moment. Despite the government's continual assurances that the dam is structurally sound, the public remains weary even to this day. Chinese hydrologist Wang Weiluo remains the biggest skeptic of the dam's viability. He pointed out that the dam's quality inspection, construction, and overall design were conducted by the same group. Additionally, he believes the project as a whole was completed too quickly. It's also been found that the water levels for at least 148 rivers in China have risen above their warning thresholds, which means that the Three Gorges Dam will have a limited effect on future flood control. Over the years, this dam was praised as being one of the greatest engineering accomplishments in human history. However, structural integrity, including warps and cracks in the foundation, could put many lives, particularly those living in the lower reaches of the Yangtze River, at risk. When the dam was first built, Chinese officials said it could withstand the worst flood in a 10,000-year period. Not long after that, they changed the time frame to 1,000 years, and eventually 100 years. This shows the lowering confidence in the dam's structural integrity. Other scientists who have spoken out about potential issues have been criminalized, and it's possible the public in China is woefully unprepared for an unprecedented catastrophe. If the dam were to fail, it would impact over 400 million people living downstream and would very likely be the worst flood in recorded history. Over the last several decades, the country of Iraq has experienced a variety of problems and conflicts. As of late, things have seemed to calm down on the diplomatic front, but other issues still plague the region. One of which exists within the country's largest dam, the Mosul Dam, and it is a threat that needs to be dealt with sooner rather than later. The Mosul Dam, formerly known as Saddam Dam, is the largest dam in Iraq. It is located on the Tigris River in the western area of Nineveh, just upstream from the city of Mosul. With construction being completed in 1986, the dam holds back about 2.7 cubic miles of water and provides electricity to the 1.7 million residents of Mosul. Even though this incredible structure is strong enough to hold back this volume of water, many argue that its strength is quickly deteriorating due to the foundation on which it was built. During construction in the 1980s, engineers didn't take into account that the ground underneath the dam was made of gypsum, a soft mineral that dissolves in contact with, you guessed it, water. Unfortunate, right? Over the years, engineers have worked non-stop to continue plugging various leaks that appear. But these are short-term fixes to a long-term problem. Without a more permanent solution, the dam may fail and a breach will send a tsunami-like wave through cities and villages all along the Tigris River from Mosul to as far south as Amara. Within 4 days of the breach, Baghdad would be submerged under 5 meters of water, and the death toll could reach over 500,000 people. Plus, these are only the immediate issues. The long-term effects of no electricity, tainted drinking water, lack of hospitals, and no transportation could lead to even more casualties. Africa is home to many huge and powerful rivers. One of these is the Zambezi River that runs along the border between the countries of Zimbabwe and Zambia. Straddling these two countries is the Kafue Dam, which holds back the world's largest man-made reservoir by capacity. However, there are some very grave concerns surrounding the dam as it is starting to show signs of its age. Along with cracks appearing on its wall, the area is prone to earthquakes and heavy flooding. It leaves people in fear that the dam will fail, causing a catastrophe of apocalyptic proportions. First, just take in the sheer size of the dam. It was built in 1955, is 579 meters wide, 128 meters tall, and holds back over 189 billion tons of water. Although it was not known at the time, it has been discovered in recent years that the sluice water from the dam has caused a plunge pool to form over the decades. This continual water erosion has been cutting through the walls of the plunge pool backwards towards the dam. In short, the dam itself is starting to erode away. Eventually, if it isn't dealt with, the weight of the water in the reservoir will burst through the wall. Authorities have assured people that they are aware of the situation and are taking steps to shore up the dam. They have also said that if the repairs aren't carried out within 3 years, Kafue may collapse. What would result, aside from the incredible flooding and loss of life, is about half of the country being without electricity, adding to an already sizable power shortage problem. Tourism would take a huge hit, and various industries all around the river would crumble, resulting in an economic collapse for the region. Lake Isabella rests at the southernmost tip of the Sierra Nevada mountains. It's located about 3,000 feet over the city of Bakersfield, a town with a population of roughly 350,000 people. The Isabella Dam, located at this lake, was constructed in the early 1950s, long before modern engineering standards were in place, which makes it highly vulnerable to damage. Internal erosion could potentially lead to seepage and ultimately total failure. And as though that wasn't bad enough, geologists have also found that the dam was built directly alongside an active fault line. These problems were discovered in the 2000s, and an action plan immediately went into place to prevent more seepage from occurring. However, the dam has plenty of issues, and over 250,000 people are in harm's way. This is why it is paramount for residents of Bakersfield, California to be aware of the issue the dam presents, so they can have an action plan to get out of harm's way should the dam ever fail. The Army Corps has issued a statement saying how it doesn't appear as though the dam will break anytime soon. In 2017, the Corps awarded a $204 million contract to construct modifications at the dam to address identified seepage concerns as well as seismic and overtopping issues. New construction began in 2018 and is expected to be finished in 2022. Now, you wouldn't think the city of Los Angeles, California to be home to many dams, right? After all, it's mostly just a huge urban area. At the southern boundary of the San Gabriel Valley lies the Whittier Narrows, a water gap between the Puente Hills to the east and the Montebello Hills to the west. Through this gap, the waters of the Rio Hondo and the San Gabriel River flow. So, a small dam was built here, measuring only 32 feet across and 56 feet high. It is used to provide water conservation storage and is the most important part of the Los Angeles County drainage area. Although the gap is quite narrow, the entire dam itself is nearly a mile long and comprises 12,166 cubic yards of material. Something of this size would be a great barrier between the enormous reservoir and the millions of people in Los Angeles, right? Well, in September of 2017, the United States Army Corps of Engineers officials paid a visit to the dam for an inspection. What they found was quite alarming to the residents of Los Angeles. Officials warned the residents that the dam no longer met the agency's tolerable risk guidelines. In the event of a significant natural disaster, such as a very large storm, flash flood, or major earthquake, it could rupture and flood the city with hundreds of millions of gallons of water. Now, although rare, these events are known to occur. They've happened in December of 1861 and January of 1862, when the so-called arc storm struck the area, dumping record amounts of rain on the southern part of California. Currently, a plan is being developed to tackle the problem, but other than that, not much has been done. The Mullaperiyar Dam in Kerala, India, finished construction in 1895. Water from the Periyar Lake is diverted through a shatter shed and transferred through a series of pipelines to the Periyar power station, where it's used to generate electricity. It's an important feature in the region, but there is some genuine cause for concern about its longevity. In 1979, India suffered a tragedy when the Morvi Dam failed, resulting in the deaths of 15,000 individuals. Safety concerns were then placed on the Mullaperiyar Dam, which was already experiencing alleged cracks and leaks. Shortly thereafter, a study was conducted which found that the dam would not be able to withstand the force of an earthquake with a magnitude of at least 6 on the Richter scale. The main problem is that this dam was constructed with methods that are no longer deemed viable. For example, the dam was made using stone rubble masonry with lime mortar grouting. Worst of all, the dam is located in a region that has been deemed seismically active. Tremors and smaller earthquakes have occurred since the 1980s. Fortunately, none of them were strong enough to cause significant damage to the dam, but the risk remains. It is for this reason that calls have transpired in recent years to decommission the dam. Expert opinion is divided, with some people believing repairs are enough to hold off catastrophe, while others are convinced this dam simply needs to go. If nothing is done and the dam were to break, then 3.5 million lives would be at risk of suddenly being swept away in torrential flooding. The longer the country continues to wait, the longer millions of lives are in jeopardy. Not too far from the small town of Glasgow, Montana, is one of the biggest reservoirs in the entire world, the Fort Peck Dam. But according to Dr. Bernard Shanks, this nearly 80-year-old dam is one of the most hazardous in North America. Dr. Shanks is a former land and wildlife advisor who has been studying dams on the Missouri River for over 40 years. He believes the central problem lies in the way the dam was built. His thoughts were echoed by Darren McMurray, the Fort Peck Dam operations manager, who stated, "The dam itself was constructed out of hydraulic fill, which is basically a slurry of mud and water pumped from both downstream and upstream of the dam location. It's not a safe methodology to build dams. This technique makes it much more likely the dam could collapse, and there is historical precedent for this. When the dam was first constructed in 1938, there was a collapse that resulted in the deaths of 8 men. Over the decades, dam construction has moved away from hydraulic filling for this very reason. If the Fort Peck Dam were to burst, then it would result in a domino-like effect that would also result in the destruction of 5 other dams located downstream, reaching all the way to St. Louis. Along the way, the flooding would destroy pipelines, highways, bridges, and anything else in its path. It would become the worst flood in American history, with thousands of lives lost. Fortunately, there doesn't seem to be any imminent risk, but it's only a matter of time until the right combination of factors coalesces. An earthquake of the right magnitude could be enough to set it off. In 2011, the Army Corps of Engineers proposed $225 million to repair the Fort Peck Dam. And yet, they only received roughly 1/5 of that amount. While there are many projects that require government attention, the Fort Peck Dam is one that should not be ignored for much longer. Back in 2017, Hurricane Harvey hammered the United States. The state of Texas was one that was hit particularly hard, with immense flooding found in many different areas. Even before the hurricane, things weren't looking good for the Addicks and Barker dams, but the hurricane only proved the need to be more proactive about a dam on the brink of failure. During the hurricane, water levels in the reservoirs filled to record levels. To prevent the dam from becoming too overwhelmed, the United States Army Corps of Engineers released water into the Buffalo Bayou. The dams were already considered extremely high risk due to their age and the signs of them beginning to wear out. The Corps has insisted that the dams present no imminent threat of failing, and they even seemed more confident after surviving Hurricane Harvey. However, fixing the dams needs to remain one of Houston's priorities. Jim Blackburn, a local environmental attorney, said, "I don't think there's any question about it. If these dams were to burst, if we were to have a dam failure, it would be devastating. I mean, it would just wipe out the west side of Houston. I think that is a remote possibility, but it is a very real possibility. But fortunately, progress has been made to minimize the threat. Crews continue to work on new gates and concrete channels to help better control the flow of water." Now, one country you don't hear much about in the news is Tajikistan. It's here where the Nurek Dam, one of the country's largest, exists, and is at risk of a terrible disaster. This 2,309-foot-long powerhouse is an earth-filled dam that was completed in 1980. Rising over 984 feet high, it is one of the most noticeable features in the region. Additionally, there is an impervious core of concrete that reaches 52 feet into the bedrock, making it incredibly strong. But even with its impressive dimensions, there is danger to be found, as the dam's integrity could actually be compromised. In 1980, when the dam was built, it took quite a long time to fill the reservoir. After all, it covers an area that is roughly 38 square miles. During this time, the weight of the water flowing in and slamming against the surrounding peaks generated quite a bit of seismic activity. Now, this wasn't a real concern at the time because none of it was really that big, but it did make clear the possibility that further seismic activity could be disastrous for the area, destabilizing the dam and sending a huge wall of water rushing over everything. Thankfully, as the region is not densely populated, the damage caused by such a flood would not be on the same level as any of the other disasters we've pointed out today. The real trouble wouldn't come from lives being taken by floodwaters. The reservoir is actually the source of water for something called the Dangara Irrigation Tunnel, which is used to irrigate about 300 square miles of farmland. Now, we often look at dams with a certain sense of awe and wonder. Humans are capable of creating some truly amazing things. There are some dams, however, that weren't built by men, but rather formed by natural processes. That is the case of the Osoy Dam, which, from the very first moments of existence, ended up claiming a number of lives. This natural dam was formed in 1911 when an earthquake in the country of Tajikistan triggered a landslide that blocked the Murghab River, forming Lake Sarez. But this landslide also buried much of the village of Osoy, claiming the lives of hundreds of people. Standing roughly 1,860 feet tall, the Osoy Dam is the world's highest natural dam. Today, Lake Sarez is fairly isolated from larger cities. The only bit of civilization that exists are somewhere between 20 and 30 villages in the Bartang Valley, with more scattered across the surrounding areas. Little do they realize, though, they are all in very real danger. Scientists and engineers have studied the dam and found that it is in danger of total collapse. How could this happen? Well, there are a few different ways. The first and most obvious cause for collapse would be an earthquake, much like the one that formed it, causing the rock and soil to give way, releasing the millions of gallons of water behind it. Second, another landslide could send hundreds of thousands of cubic rock and dirt falling into the reservoir, displacing large volumes of water and triggering a mini tsunami that would slam into the existing dam, causing considerable damage and potentially including a collapse. The final way, and an all too real threat in today's world, would be by way of terrorism. Should any of these scenarios play out, a wall of water measuring over 100 feet high could end up claiming the lives of nearly 5 million people, not only in Tajikistan, but also in Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan. For now, though, let your worries be at ease. Governments in all of these countries understand the risk and hopefully are working hard to do something about it. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more just like it, then be sure to click the link on screen now. With that said, thanks for watching and be sure to tune in next time.